After Hitler pushed through Europe and into France, his next conquest, England, stood up to him in defiance. Only 90 miles from the French coast, the British Isles were in danger of invasion from the sea and bombardment from the air. It was in the air war that English pilots of the RAF distinguished themselves and would forever be credited with winning the Battle of Britain. George Unwin was a Spitfire pilot in the Royal Air Force. This is where he would meet the enemy, in the skies over war-torn Britain, on the battlefront. Now poised at the Channel, Hitler tries to talk the English into surrender. When they resist, he orders his chiefs of staff to begin work on a secret plan for the invasion of England. The code name is Operation Sea Lion. Before the Germans can cross the Channel, they must eliminate the only remaining British defense, the Royal Air Force. German Air Minister Reich Marshal Hermann Göring is given the responsibility for the air battles that will cripple England. Hitler plans to force British fighter pilots into the air so the Luftwaffe can drastically reduce their numbers, paving the way for any big offensive in the future. By July, 1,500 German bombers and over 1,000 fighters are concentrated within easy flying distance of the United Kingdom. With the German forces about to strike England, the situation looks hopeless. Their first line of defense are the Hurricanes and Spitfires. One of the young RAF flyers piloting a Spitfire is George Unwin.
The thing about the Spitfire that was so useful in combat was its maneuverability. One of the things that frightens pilots to death is a spin. The Messerschmitt, the German fighter, was particularly bad on high-speed stall. And so we could turn inside any of the German fighters, and that was the one thing that saved us time and time again. Invariably in a fight, you're chasing each other round and round and round, but you could turn much more tight, smaller turning circle than any German fighter. The aircraft was perfect in every possible way.
Aircraft production is operating at maximum capacity, but the RAF still only has 620 planes. British flyers are outnumbered by at least 2 to 1 by their German counterparts.
I was one of the lucky boys. I'd been flying for 4 years when the war started. I had 600 hours flying on fighters. You can't count in any other way the advantage that gave you. We had the experience and the ability to fly. Flying is experience. The more you fly, the better you get. But the Germans were pretty good too. The German bombers were nearly always escorted by fighters. And the Spitfire, with its greater speed and maneuverability, eventually it was decided that they should take on the fighters, leaving the Hurricanes free to attack the bombers, because the Hurricane firepower was so concentrated, he could shoot down the bombers as fast as they could put them up, providing they were not interfered with. And so our orders were to take on the escort, keep the escort away from the Hurricanes, who would then do the necessary and shoot down the bombers as far as possible. I know the German pilots had fought a war in Spain, and the experienced ones, but they weren't all experienced. And as the fight went on, it was becoming obvious that their replacements were nowhere near as good as their predecessors. The Germans always flew in pairs, you see. We flew stupidly in threes for a while, until we tumbled to it. But in pairs, you coloured onto a German, got behind him. It was 10 to 1, the other German was behind you.
By August, Göring estimates that he needs only 4 days to put the English fighter planes out of action. He begins preparations for Adler Tag, or the Eagle attack, an operation which will be the knockout blow to the RAF. It is decided that the attack will commence on August 13th. For the first time in history, a great campaign is going to be fought and decided in the air.
On the run home, you were completely in daylight, and the Spitfires were able to shoot down large numbers of German planes and pilots. The Germans had the long flight from Germany to Britain and back again, and the odds were with the defenders because they had better planes and they didn't have to fly as far.
For For the British, the situation is becoming more serious. They are still shooting down more enemy planes than they themselves are losing. But they have now come to a point where the loss of a single plane, or the death or wounding of even one pilot, represents an important setback. Fighter Command strength had stood at 1,400 pilots at the end of July. 3 weeks later, it has fallen to 1,000. The pilot forces are being dangerously diminished. The communication systems in airfields are being battered. Even the pilot reserves are reaching desperate lows. Now the question is, how much longer can Fighter Command hold out? How much longer before the Luftwaffe deals its final crushing blow? How many more days can the English withstand the onslaught? The Luftwaffe is now ordered to switch the offensive from the RAF to the City of London. Hitler believes that a prolonged bombing of London will cause panic and mass hysteria among the population. But the side effect is that the airfields and sector stations are spared at a crucial moment. The RAF is given time to repair the damage done to their facilities and equipment. It also takes the pressure off their fighter pilots. One more week of attacks might have led to disaster. Now the RAF can reconsolidate its forces. However, the first requirement for a successful invasion has not yet been met. The English Fighter Command is still operating. Hitler decides to await the outcome of the next few days. The British Air Force meets the enemy head-on. The result, fewer than half the German planes succeed in dropping their bombs. Hitler, still hoping that the British will crumble under the repeated attacks on their capital, again postpones his decision to invade. He has been assured that air supremacy is almost within his grasp. The Luftwaffe is now facing a crisis. They must claim victory without any more delay. Göring picks Sunday, September 15th, as the day of reckoning. The morning of September 15th turns out to be ideal flying weather, cloudless and with fine visibility. At about 10:30 a.m., the radar warning system picks up enemy planes gathering over the French coast.
I knew there were a hell of a lot of raids coming in. So I'm at 25,000 feet, so I started looking for some trade, as we used to call it. And I saw this huge armada of bombers coming in, forgetting all about their escort fighters. And I flew straight into the middle of the escort fighters on my own. And I was surrounded with it, whizzing all over the place. So I just simply put the Spitfire into a really tight turn. And every time one of these flashed past me, I pressed the button. But I got away with it and actually shot one down, I think. Its psychological effect upon the German fighters and bombers was incredible. Their morale was down to start with because they were losing every fight they got into. And they were being told that one more big push and it's all over. And they believe this and they come over and they suddenly see 60 fighters, not just a squad. And they've been told we've got none left at all. So the effect on their morale must have been enormous. And the younger pilots, who we found out were far, far inferior to the ones we'd been up against, say, at Dunkirk, they were no match for us at all.
The great battle, which rages all day, was to have crushed Fighter Command. It is instead a shattering blow to the German airmen. The Luftwaffe has been routed. Again, Hitler's gamble has lost. George Unwin would continue to fly with the RAF and be credited with shooting down 14 enemy planes. He would always be grateful for his aircraft.
If we hadn't had the Spitfire in 1940, then I think it would have been very, very bad. We would have lost the air battle and we would have lost the war.
During the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe lose over 2,300 aircraft. The British lose 600 fighters.